I'm going to ask one more question, and if there's other questions out there, please raise your hand and we will take those as well. This one's going to be to Mark Sullivan. As far as the industry's efforts, getting and educating referral sources, clinicians, caregivers on the benefits or value.
Many people that want to spend the rest of their life in a nursing home, so we don't really have to convince them of that. In fact, years ago, before I was with Invacare, I was working in the hospitals as a recreational therapist. I remember we used to tell people that they were going to a nursing home, when they left the rehab, some of the elderly people, they would go downhill almost immediately once they found out they weren't going home. So I don't think that's where our work is. I think the clinicians know the value of home care. I think the physicians all know the value of home care. Where we failed as an industry is the payers. Getting them to understand what the value of this home care and what the real cost savings is. And again, I don't think we've done a good job as an industry, whether it's providers or manufacturers, putting a monetary amount to that. We've all, everybody's published articles, everybody's talked about outcome studies, but we've done a lousy job of really documenting that in terms of cost savings, partly because it's tough to do. If you want to do a really controlled study, then find 10 people and take their wheelchair away from them and have another 10 people with their wheelchair, you'll wind up with a pretty good outcome study, but nobody really wants to do that. So we're in a little bit of a trap in terms of how to really educate the payers on the value of home care and the value of our equipment. So we also, I think, Daniel, we need many more providers and therapists to be involved. I sit on a lot of industry work groups, and it's always the same people, almost on every group, whether it's the clinician or the provider and the manufacturers. I can probably name the 25 people that are constantly involved, so we need more people.
Great. Lou, you had a comment on that?
I'd like to add a couple of things to that. Probably after 23 years, the greatest frustration that I have is that what Mark talked about is that we've not been able to market home care as the trifecta of health care. And when Mark talks about the people that know about the value of home care, he talks still very much within our own society, within our own group. In order for the people that hold the purse on this to get them connected to it, it has to become a mainstream media news event. Home health care is the trifecta of health care. Why? Number one, people dream of going home. Every one of us knows somebody close to us that was in the hospital, and where do you want to go? It's home. It's so compelling. This is not something you have to make up. This is real life. All of us are living. Second part, people do better in a home care setting. Besides the fact that they're not exposed to all the things that you are exposed to in an acute care or in a continuing care facility. And the third part is, it is 1/5 the cost on some of the studies that have been done of continuing care. So here we are. We are branded by some of the bad apples that are in our industry, where all the media focus, the mainstream media focus goes. It goes to the bad apples. Part of that is the two reasons for that. CMS gave out all those Medicare numbers, and the industry did not self-police itself early enough to keep more bad apples out. So here we are today, for the politicians to move that 2% that home care represents in Medicare, to give that a bigger share, and to address or to meet the three things home care does. people prefer being home, people having better outcomes and having a lower cost. We have to get people that are directly affected by voters to start thinking differently, and the mainstream media does not carry our story. We have tried to get a story out about non-delivery of oxygen. You know, we have clients, these providers, they have clients that have 40, 60 cylinders in their home because they're scared, they're worried. They have to wait for somebody to come to the house. You know, all of those things. Have we seen one story? We finally saw one story in a respiratory magazine about the father of non-delivery of transfilling, J.B. Richey. It is probably one of the greatest impacts to people that are on oxygen what transfilling does. We've not been able to get that story in the mainstream media. That's one of the biggest challenges we have as an industry to get beyond our own self, but that people start talking about this part of their life. And this is something that I've tried and I haven't gotten very far, but that has to be the driver to get home care to the forefront of our healthcare system. Thank you.
That was great. Okay. I'd like to. I mean, we've touched on several areas: technology. We've touched on home care. You know, how to cash flow businesses and things of that such. And really, this is a good segue to what Lou just spoke to. And if we could address it, maybe from the provider side first. Where do you see this industry in 5 years or 10 years? What do you think will be different, and possibly who will be selling some of the H&E equipment that's out there that we're selling today? Will it be that same model, or will we see something completely different, a different model in 5 or 10 years? If you have some perspective on that. Mark, you want to lead off, or Joel?
I'll try first. Boy, if I had a crystal ball like that, that would really be worth something. But I think there's no question there's going to be fewer providers in the industry. We're going to see some consolidation in the industry. There's going to be winners and losers in this market environment in the next year or two. A lot depends too on the success or lack of success of the bid program. If the train wreck that most providers like myself, and I think Joel would agree, that I think is going to happen in the first 10 MSAs happen, that could change the dynamics to a point where maybe our industry has a little leverage, a little credibility to swing the pendulum back the other way. But unfortunately, I think that train wreck's going to have to happen in order for the payer system to listen to us and to start thinking that our arguments are not just self-serving. There are patients that are going to be affected dramatically by these changes. And hopefully, we'll start to see that as the beginning of an evolution to some of the models that have been described here today, where it's a more holistic approach to patient care, like Dr. Landers alluded to.
Joel?
I do agree that there will be fewer providers, there will be larger providers. In my perfect world, Medicare would acknowledge that you can't ship a complex rehab wheelchair by UPS and just drop it off. Right now, they don't compensate you for coming back 8, 10, 12 times, doing what needs to be done to get it adjusted. You talk about seeing the patient. They still treat it as a product. They still treat respiratory as a piece of equipment, and nothing to do with the training of the patient, making sure the patient is using it properly, having availability of product 24/7, and all the other things that providers do to make sure that you're not delivering a product, but you're getting a result. And until they compensate, I mean, that's where I would like to see it in 5 to 10 years. I don't think, I'm fighting to get it there. I'm not sure it will get there. It's still a product-driven reimbursement model. And I don't see that changing unless you end up with some sort of hospital-centric or physician-centric model like in some of the other parts of the world. But the way it's set up now, I don't see that as changing, and it's still going to be a fee-for-service for a specific product. You need to be more efficient. I think something Dr. Anders mentioned earlier, we need to triage our own patients. And we've been doing this the last couple of years where a nocturnal-only oxygen patient doesn't get the same level of contact as a 24-hour highly ambulatory patient might. We may do telephone contacts instead of in-person contacts. But gauging the type of contact and the service levels to the patient, not all oxygen patients are the same. And that has nothing to do with the reimbursement for that patient. It has to do with what their clinical needs are. So I do see that as a change coming down the road.
Great. JB, quick perspective on what you think the industry will look like in a decade from now.
It's probably a tough question for me. Good question. But, you know, some of these things I call the Holy Grail will be done by then. I have another one I like to call the Holy Grail. That's a portable oxygen concentrator. It weighs 5 pounds, puts out 3 liters continuous, runs on a battery for 6 or 8 hours for a recharge. Makes no noise. And, you know, fits in your coat pocket. Well, close to that, Joe. But, you know, this is, the kind, things like this will be coming down the pipe. The method of making oxygen hasn't changed for a long, long, long time. Synth beds have been the way that people have done it for a long time. They've looked at other methods. None of them work as well. And there are other techniques, but they're more expensive. However, like fuel cells, which aren't fully developed yet because you don't see them in cars yet, but like fuel cells, there'll be new ways to make oxygen in 5 years, I think. And they'll start to meet some of these holy grails I talked about. There'll be some better sensing, like for glucose and so forth. They'll be there. There'll be better batteries. So the wheelchairs are going to get smaller and lighter. And motors that are kind of expensive now will come down, so you'll be able to